Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are very honored today to host His Excellency Faisal Alibrahim, the Minister of Economy and Planning of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's ambitious economic transformation under Vision 2030 is making substantial progress, driven by targeted modernization and economic diversification strategies. In 2023, Saudi Arabia's non-oil GDP grew by a robust 3.8%, fueled primarily by private consumption and non-oil investment. Moreover, non-oil growth is expected to reach 4.4% in the medium term, mainly driven by stronger domestic demand as the implementation of Vision 2030 gains momentum. Your Excellency, welcome here. We're very happy to host you. And allow me first to congratulate you on this remarkable success, and maybe I'd like you to walk us through 2030 vision and explain to us the key priorities of the government over the coming years.
Sure. Thank you very much, Rasha. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. I'd start by saying that the reason Vision 2030 was put in place was that in the very long term, if you extend the investment horizon, you'll see that the way the Saudi economy was growing was not sustainable. It was not the most optimal, let's say, way to grow an economy and develop a society. So decisions were made to unlock the potential of the Saudi economy and Saudi society. The idea is if you're operating below your potential, you're operating at a loss. Year after year, that loss accumulates. Maybe one generation will be fine with these losses, but ultimately, the loss accumulation will affect future generations. It'll affect even the things that we take for granted and think are I'd say, untouchable, like household income and I'd say global economic relevance and security, et cetera, in the very long term. So this was a serious transformation that's not just trying to improve a ranking or two. No, this is trying to unlock core economic and social potential. Priorities, the way we look at it, is to simplify, maybe oversimplify. We always knew we have to diversify the economy, but we want to do it in an accelerated fashion and in a way that brings in more sources of growth, not sources of income or sources of revenue, sources of growth into the economy, coming from and flowing into the economy through more channels, not just public finance. Yes, we acknowledge, because of the economic structure of the kingdom, that public finance was and still is instrumental in economic activity, but we want to create the environment where the private sector truly becomes more dynamic and able to truly lead the economic development and economic activity story in the kingdom. Until then, public finance will play a role, but with a mindset that this role is transitionary. There are levers that will help in that direction, mainly the Public Investment Fund and the Sovereign Wealth Fund and the National Development Fund, with two different focus areas. But ultimately, the objective is for the private sector to grow. We have set an ambitious target of 65% for the private sector. We're moving slowly in that direction, and we're looking at ways to improve that. In terms of results, you've said some of them, but we've seen more activities playing a bigger role in our non-oil economy. Non-oil economy has grown fast. Today, the non-oil activities represent 53% of total real GDP, and that's a milestone, but it's not our desired or only accomplishment. We want that to grow. We want the degree at which the rest of the economy relies on oil flows and dependence on that to decrease. We've managed to decrease it from effectively 90+% to the low 70s, maybe today, if we do an assessment, below 70%. That's how much of economic activities relies directly and indirectly on oil flows, and we want to go even further than that, of course. A lot more we want to achieve in terms of the quality and the sustainability of this diversification story, but also in terms of the pace. And we're going as far as studying behavior of the private sector, constraints in certain sectors, and so on and so forth, trying to understand deeply how sectors behave, but then trying to put solutions that cut across all sectors, that doesn't, as they say, pick winners, that really creates the environment for the private sector to grow faster and play a role where ultimately we can export services that are competitive. And here we're talking mainly what we call tourism plus, tourism, sports, entertainment, and culture, and of course other areas of services, but also industry plus, to be able to export competitive, complex products, competitive in the external markets. So the whole behavior is shifting towards thinking about external markets. And this, what's related to this is our GCC FTAs and how important of a role they play in unlocking external markets for our players. Yes, they may bring in some competition, but if you want the private sector to grow, to be more dynamic, some competition is good. And government support needs to always be objective driven and time bound. And so we're trying to get into that mode. Number two is human capital development outcomes. This is very important. Saudi is a very young population, 63% below the age of 30. Only 3% or 4% of the Saudi population are above the age of 64. We've actually calculated how many years we have before we lose the opportunity to capture that demographic dividend. Working age population today is at its highest. It will continue to grow for about 20 years, then it will peak in favor of the age above 64. And we need to make sure that as we approach that aging, let's say, marker or the starting point, productivity grows. And it's a bit challenging because we are productive where in the areas that we know how to operate and function, mainly energy and petchem, but also financial services. And a side note, these two were served by the existence of strong institutions, Aramco in energy and petchem, and of course SABIC, but also in financial services, central bank, and more recently the Capital Market Authority. And it happens also to be where we have the highest number of high-value jobs for locals, for Saudis. If you want to diversify your economy, naturally you'll have to accept that you will start, because your diversification, we're talking to some of our experts. We were in Boston a couple of days ago talking to establish some more research partnerships. And diversification is essentially doing what you don't know what you don't know how to do. And start learning to do new things. Of course, productivity will take a dip. How do you bring in effects or bring in solutions to continue to see productivity grow? So on priority two, the important thing is human capital development outcomes, but also how to shift to a productivity-driven economic growth story that builds on this knowledge accumulation as an essential. Number three, the importance of building or continuing to build institutional capabilities. I have many points to discuss on this, but ultimately you want institutions that push out, that of course will be built on the talent and the people, but that can continuously foresee long-term challenges and implement or push or put forward the policies that can help us capture them, but also that respond to the very fast changes we see around us, not only in the domestic economy, but global economy, as we grow and learn and always be 2 steps ahead. Number four is international engagement. The kingdom's always been a global citizen, but mainly focusing on diplomacy and energy. Today we have a lot to say about many things because we're looking at so many problem areas in a very short period of time. We are making, I'd say, in many cases, the right decisions, and in many other cases, we're not getting it right from the first time. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of lessons learned, there's a lot of successes and some failures, but continuing this dialogue with the international community of experts, G2G, the private sector, local and international that's interested, is important for us not only to share what we're learning, but also to learn from others' experiences and make sure that this transformation counts.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I think to your point, some of the new version sectors, including tourism, has been growing fast. I think tourism, according to the most recent IMF report, recorded 8% of GDP this year. And I know that Saudi is investing very heavily in technology and AI. including the recent news of investing about 40 billion in this sector. Like, can you explain to us how do you see yourself competing worldwide in the technology space and AI space in particular?
So I think a priority of vision under Vision 2030 and commensurate with the many investments that were made in various sectors, and because it has an impact on productivity, is technology and innovation. This has always been a priority. This is more of a priority today. We have knowledge accumulation in many sectors that we can focus on and become more of leaders in these sectors. Of course, energy and petchem is one, but desalination is another. Everything related to water, let me oversimplify. Obviously, chemicals and the use of chemicals in a way that's, I'd say, responsible. Climate technology, the whole energy transition, our version of the energy transition narrative is more just, orderly, pragmatic, but at the heart of it is the importance of technology and collaboration, because it's a wider solution suite, a more inclusive solution suite that includes carbon removal. And I think we would have been in a better place, given the shocks that happened in energy in the past years, if we had that more pragmatic view. And if the world agreed to innovate and invest in technology and collaborate, we probably would have been in a better position. But we're sticking to that. And we realize that there's an opportunity for the kingdom to be a leader in climate technology. Healthcare is another. We're talking about shipbuilding. We're talking about auto. The kingdom is planning to have a 500,000 car production capacity by 2030. Majority of that is EVs. Investing in hybrid engine and powertrain technologies through Aramco, and many others. But at the heart of all of this is technology and innovation, and it's a fast way to really improve our productivity objective and go. The challenges we're facing with productivity as we're diversifying the economy, and you can't ignore what AI could mean in that direction. The kingdom has, I'd say, 3 priorities there. One, obviously, you have a sovereign wealth fund. A big part of your diversification story is investing in the right targets, sectors, segments to de-risk, to get more exposure, and there's many investment policy statements there. But Gen AI is getting a priority, of course. And the idea is to not miss out on the opportunity, both financially, but also, more importantly, strategically in terms of access. Number 2 is for the government, but also the private sector, NGOs, to be capable users or power users of these tools as they evolve. It's clear that it's not that clear what these tools are for everyone. So really being at the cutting edge, trying to discover what this is. There are use cases that have tools that the private sector in Saudi are already using, Aramco, SABIC, and others, even smaller enterprises. But in the public sector, NGOs, it's still something we're trying to understand how this would be very useful for policymaking, for regulatory impact assessment, for evidence-driven, science-driven decision-making. So that's important. Number 3, obviously the kingdom, as part of its diversification agenda, we want to be a bigger part of this value chain. Everything from the energy that's going with it, and we're seeing news. If you read the papers for the last year, you'll see how it became okay to talk about missing out on carbon neutrality targets, et cetera, for big companies, including big tech. And now we're hearing news about big tech companies investing in their own power solutions, including nuclear, small modular reactors, SMRs, investing in the companies that are looking at these solutions. So everything from the energy side, because there's demand for energy for these tools and solutions long term, to providing the talent, providing the land, providing the regulatory environment that's competitive, and so on and so forth. We want to be a bigger part of that value chain globally.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And as you have rightly touched on climate action, and as we approach COP29 just in 3 weeks from now, what are the key objectives for Saudi Arabia at COP29?
So, of course, we'll be participating. It's important to keep the dialogue open. It's important to make sure that this dialogue and discussion is inclusive of all views, and to keep evidence, science, pragmatism at the heart of that discussion. We've seen recently how some automakers have struggled with their EV targets because of many challenges. Namely, some of them, even though we're investing in EV and we're betting on it, but also timing is important. I'm using this just as an example. In the US, I think EVs are an attractive solution, but practically on the ground, it's not always the cheapest option. It's not always easy to get in a car and drive from state to state. It's not always clear how many people, how many cars are going to be in the charging stations, if they were even fast charging stations. There's so many questions. We're going to get there somewhere, at some point. We're betting on it. But it's important to have that, I'd say, more pragmatic approach to these solutions. It's important to look at things like hybrid engines as permanent technologies, potentially, not just transitory technologies. So keeping these kinds of discussions where these debates happen alive and making sure everybody is participating in it is important. The Kingdom will continue to be a conventional hydrocarbon energy producer and the leader in that regard, the cleanest globally. I think 1 or 2 countries have potential, I don't know about the latest figures, but maybe last year a better number, but at scale compared to what these countries produce, the Kingdom is effectively the cleanest producer. Also transitioning to become in addition to that, a leader in renewable energy. We have the cheapest wind and cheapest solar being developed in the northwest of Saudi by the private sector. We have a company called Aqua Power that was private sector born, driven and managed until today, even if there is sovereign wealth fund investment recently. But also looking at carbon removal and advancing technologies there. We're investing in carbon capture, utilization, sequestration solutions in the east of Saudi, and ultimately later on there are grander plans to have a larger capacity throughout the Kingdom. We're also looking at hydrogen, both blue and green. We started piloting shipments of blue ammonia eastwards, and we're developing today the largest green hydrogen facility in the west of Saudi, in Oxagon, in Neom. And we're, betting on a larger, I'd say, energy mix.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And we did have the honor to host the CEO of Aqua Power, and we worked closely looking at their example of establishing a global model out of, like an initially local Saudi company to really a global company operating in Africa, Asia, and other locations. So I can maybe conclude by thinking about opportunities for the Saudi economy. There are many opportunities for the Saudi economy if economic and structural reforms continue to progress and take momentum. However, the Kingdom also faces several risks. So I would just list maybe 4, and I'd like you to rank them in order of importance from your perspective. Weaker global demand, financial market volatility, geopolitical risk, and non-OPEC plus supply growth.
That's a very tough question towards the end. I'm pretty sure my team and I, we would debate this and maybe not agree on the ranking, but maybe we agree that these are areas that between our team and many teams in the government are always looking at. The idea of looking at long-term risks is important. I think we're looking closely at all of this. I will get the geopolitical question out of the way. We're doing this transformation because it unlocks the potential of the Kingdom, but we acknowledge that a stronger Kingdom is good. A stronger Saudi economy is good for the region, and we've seen the effect of that. On top of that, the Kingdom has been playing a more proactive role than traditional. It's always been playing a proactive role, but I'd say more steadfast in the last few years, ironing out most of the wrinkles in the region up until October last year, but still putting in a lot of effort diplomatically to de-escalate and create the environment for dialogue to be the I'd say, medium of discussion and medium of negotiation and whatnot. We'll continue both paths, the very head-on diplomatic one, but the very indirect unlocking of our own economic and social potential. And we're thinking very long-term. The regions always face challenges, and if we use these challenges as a reason not to unlock the potential of the kingdom, we probably wouldn't have started Vision 2030. The idea of Vision 2030 is based on a decision to be optimistic about the future. Optimism is usually a matter of the heart and soul and a gut feeling, but sometimes it's a matter of the mind. And in the Saudi story, it was a decision to be optimistic about the future and put in the work that will deliver results commensurate with that optimism. As far as energy markets, I think this is something we're always solving for in terms of long-term stability of the markets. There's importance for a certain amount of investment to be done to make sure that the supply will be provided for the growing demand. Demand may ebb and flow, but ultimately, as we see, is something that's trending upwards. Global demand, of course, we look at it, but part of the diversification story is to be exposed to more sources of that demand competitively. So I'd say on the energy side, for example, we're looking at what's happening in China for this year. China's still going to grow. If it hits the 5% or not, it's still going to be significant growth. But we're looking at things like what China's trying to do to stimulate the economy, everything from the third plenum to the announcements after that to the most recent, I'd say, press conference by the Ministry of Finance. Try to understand what that will mean for Saudi in 24, potentially 25. But not to the point where we feel that it's a looming risk. It's just an understanding of what the impact will be vis-a-vis our plans. And the fourth one?
Financial market volatility.
I'd say that the kingdom's always had an integrated approach to global financial markets, and we're part of the global discussion ever since the crisis until today in anything that will help stabilize the market. We're obviously observing what's happening in the US in terms of the decisions. We're also observing what that means for us as we deepen our own financial markets locally. I believe there's more room for our financial markets to be more deep and offering more, I'd say, solutions to both local and also incoming players in the economy. It's something we're looking at. I'd say commensurate with how the world today is looking at it in terms of potential risks. But I don't know if I ranked them, but I'll tell you that we look at a lot of these. Today, what I can tell you comfortably is there's more repositioning towards thinking long-term, obviously with Vision 2030, but also with how the long-term will play out and what that means to our decisions today.
Your Excellency, I do share your optimism. It's an impressive success story that has many positive spillovers for the whole region, not only Saudi. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for being with us today. We've been very honored. Thank you all for watching us today.